He's the deal lawyer, and he's the certified coach. Find out what happens when these two professionals talk about universal questions and topics that require insightful answers. This week, the guys meet to talk about... This episode starts now.
Hey, welcome everyone. Hey, we're here again. PJ, good to see you. This is probably week 4 or week 3 that we've been doing this.
It is week four.
And we've got a new person joining us here, Corey Haynes, and we're very happy to have you here, Corey. And we'll talk a little bit more about you and each other and everything. But today we have a very serious topic that we're talking about. We're talking about depression. And one of the reasons why, talk with PJ over the weekend, saying I think this is something we might want to chat about, is sort of the things that have been going on. The Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade. Personally, my daughter had a roommate recently that committed suicide, and it really impacts the profession I'm in as a lawyer. Entrepreneurs, business folks, and African Americans and others, and just generally everybody. And so I thought it makes a lot of sense to talk about this and hopefully to provide some value and help people in a time of need. And so PJ, I was glad that we both talked about this. We thought it was something we could address and hopefully help.
Absolutely, because depression is absolutely ugly. There's just no positive way to spin depression, and no one should, by the way. So yeah, we should, because there's a lot of folks. There's the folks that are in the process or the throes of depression who don't know that they can get out of it, and then there's the people who are left behind after these people have gone to the full length of committing suicide, who are now trying to tell themselves, man, if I only knew, if I had known that he or she was doing that, I could have done something, and then they live with this guilt. So everything about depression, it's a bad thing. So we're definitely going to give it, what it needs. We're going to really discuss it today, and hopefully that's very helpful to everyone today. So,
Yeah, and obviously it's not a topic, because it's depression implies something depressed, and a lot of us, especially as lawyers, we want to try to appear joyful and everything, but also as lawyers, a lot of times we are looking at things from a perspective of what can go wrong. Mm-hmm. And when you are focused on all the various ways a project or a deal can crater, or how something very bad can happen to your client, and you're focused on that, constantly advising clients of that, it can take a toll on you. Or if you're a family lawyer, you're constantly in situations where you're watching or interacting with families that are falling apart. That could be depressing, or a criminal lawyer, or whatever it may be. And then plus we're high-strung individuals in the profession, and as much as we can be high-strung as much as possible, you can't win every day.
That's exactly right. And imagine the judges having to try these court cases over and over and over again, and having to give people sentences they know this person's probably not going to ever kind of rehabilitate from, but they have to put that down. They are the judge. They are the person who has the last say on this person's life. So there's also depression from the perspective of the judge.
Yeah.
So I guess the main thing when we start looking at depression is definitely how we would define it. So I would definitely call depression that silent struggle that's continuous. That's really what depression is. And it's not always done in isolation, but a lot of the times it does make a person want to isolate, get away from people, because they feel like people that have depression is that you can see right through them. So they feel naked in front of you. And so the way they handle that is by pulling away. Yeah. And so this is helpful for those who are the survivors of family members who are people who've committed suicide, is to notice these things. Like they're showing you signs of this depression, but it's tricky because everybody gets depressed sometimes. And so hopefully today what we can do is flesh out what looks like what would be normal garden variety depression versus a depression that's absolutely debilitating.
Yeah, and so what's very obvious is that all of us at some point feel down.
Yeah.
And what's important also is that we have to understand, and we'll talk about this later as well, but feelings are temporary. They're not something that lasts forever. This morning I woke up, I was pretty happy, and then I got an email about a client that was going through some things, and then also trying to be able to land the client, and that caused some anxiety, and then and that was temporary. And then after that, then the client calls back and says, "Hey, we're gonna bring you on," or whatever. And so it's a up and down feeling, and we have to understand that feelings, emotions are temporary, and we have to be careful about utilizing permanent solutions to the temporary issue or matter. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say exactly. So when we look at depression, then there's different stages to the depression itself. So one might say that they experience this emptiness first. And the emptiness kind of stems around the idea of, I don't really have any energy, really, I don't have the energy I'm going to need to become that lawyer, to do what I need to do today, to speak in front of that crowd, or to manage this group of people. And so I'm empty, I just don't have anything to draw from. So that's like one phase. Another one would be this worthlessness feeling, like I feel like I'm just there'd be no value in me showing up that day, and besides, nobody would miss me anyway if I didn't show up, right? So there's a worthless problem there. There's a value issue going on there as well. And then I'd also say that probably the big one, and the one we see the most, is it's hopelessness.
Yeah.
Because the moment that you don't have any hope, then you will say, well, the only way this plays out then is through a method which would become something permanent, like suicide. So there's the emptiness that you'll see. You'll see a worthlessness and a sense of no value when they're speaking to you, and then also a hopelessness. And so hope is a big thing, because as people who are in the South, we're in the Bible Belt. We go to church, we hear about hope all the time. But these folks are basically saying, no, there would be no hope for me. I can't come back. Therefore, the only logical conclusion is the end game.
Yeah. And one thing, we talk about lawyers, but this, of course, impacts entrepreneurs, people of color, and just everybody. And what's interesting about, with respect to entrepreneurs, is that there's literally, a recent study was taken, 49% of entrepreneurs, out of 242 entrepreneurs, stated that they had some form of depression. And part of it is just, again, the emotional roller coaster that you're on. Even when you're winning and get win after win after win, you have to wake up the next day and something else is coming at you. And it can be just absolutely a very much of a roller coaster, debilitating type of situation at times.
Yeah, it's like this melancholy. So when you speak of entrepreneurs, once again, here's the idea, right? So you're an entrepreneur, you have an idea that's inside your head, but you've got to get that idea out and make that idea work, make it have clients who will actually pay for it. You have to produce a product, but the only person who knows how to adjust it or do anything to it or massage it would be you, because it's your idea, you're the entrepreneur. So you're isolated, you're by yourself. So if you don't win, then your company doesn't win. Nothing happens. And then if you have employees, then you have to let other people down because of it. So there's a ripple effect that also happens.
Yes.
When you're thinking about it. So from an entrepreneur perspective, there's a lot of weight, because you're venturing into the unknown, saying, I have a product, I believe it'll sell, I know it'll sell, and I think I can identify the demographic that'll buy it. And I know I have to market, and even though I may not be an extrovert, and I don't like marketing and putting myself out there, I still have to. And when you contend with all that, and then family just not understanding, like, why do you put so many hours into this thing? Maybe you're not that good at it. Maybe you should just go get a regular corporate job, right? And so now you've got that weight of people not really understanding as an entrepreneur what you're trying to do. And so if you don't have the hope, if you don't have something larger than yourself that you gain energy from, then you could succumb.
Yeah, and one quote is Mark Anderson, who founded Netscape. I think many of you may remember Netscape. And he says, first and foremost, a startup puts you on an emotional roller coaster, unlike anything you've ever experienced. You flip rapidly from day to day, one where you are euphorically convinced you're going to own the world, and to a day in which doom seems only weeks away and you feel completely helpless and you're back at it again. And I know some of you probably here may have had those type of feelings. And by the way, to the Boston Negotiator School, if you've got any questions or anything like that, please chime in. Corey, myself, and PJ, we'd love to have your questions, your feedback, or anything right now, because that's part of what we're trying to do here. But I just wanted to make sure everybody knows about that.
Absolutely. Welcome aboard, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think that's great. And then when you think about lawyers, your profession, something that you see a lot. I mean, 52% of practicing lawyers say that they're dissatisfied. They're 3.6 times more likely to be depressed than any other industry. 3.6. And then, of course, the third leading cause of death for attorneys is suicide, and it's only third to cancer and heart attacks. And you could argue that the heart attacks are also coming from a preponderance of stress that's put on someone.
Yeah.
In fact, there's even a website out there. If you Google lawyers with depression, there's a whole website, there's a video, there was a short movie made. There's a bunch of information about attorneys with depression.
Yeah. In particular, in Texas, there's a website called TLAP.
Yes.
TLAP, Texas Lawyer Assistance Program. And on that website itself, you can find all types of statistics that talk about depression, alcoholism, and suicide that impact the profession. And that's something we'll talk about at the very end, of a resource that one can go to if you are feeling depressed and you feel like you may want to try to hurt yourself. And so,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this should never be taken lightly. So having depression for a week, it's maybe one thing. But if this is going on 2, 3, 4 months, 5 months in, and you notice this person is just not responding, like let's just say you're the other person, let's say you're not the person that's depressed, but you're trying to help because you want to be that part of the community that's actually supportive, and you see that Tom is just not being Tom anymore. One of the best things we can do as a community is to reach out and show that phileo, right? The brotherly love. Philadelphia is named after, phileo, right? So the way we show love and concern for people is by actually crossing over the lines, getting off of our machines and all of our alerts and all of our technology, and really being there in the present for someone who's really saying at the moment, I don't know how I'm going to continue. And just the thought of thinking how I'm going to continue is making me go really to erratic, dark places.
Yeah.
What do you think, Corey?
Well, I think what we alluded to earlier was once you feel like, wine isn't tasting like wine, right? Once you feel like the food isn't tasting like food anymore, you need to go out, you need to go get some assistance, you need to get some help. Because this is a serious matter, and I think as of late we've seen the repercussions of everything trickling down from generation to generation, and just watching the news now can be very depressing. And just seeing some of the things that happen now. I can't really relate to what the lady's name was, but I know here in the recent, well, not even her situation, but the one where the young lady committed suicide with her
baby.
Young one.
That's right.
And that, like I said, I cannot think of her name right now, but that one was the one that really just caught my heart. Was like, wow, this here is more than serious. This is a matter that it's really good that we've all got together to hit this topic right on head, to try to bring some awareness to depression.
Well, and that's interesting you say that, Corey, because one thing, and now I'm thinking, is what are maybe some signs? Because this impacted me just recently, where my daughter, who's in college at UT Austin, had her suite mate commit suicide, and that breaks my heart, obviously, and I feel sorry for the family and the whole situation. And then there's this survivor's guilt as well, and we kind of alluded to that a little bit. What are some of the signs that one might see when you're watching someone else, a friend, because if we're one of those keeper, what should we be looking out for when we in that kind of instance where we're like, wait a minute, we may need to intervene or call somebody or whatever?
Love it. That's a great question. So I think probably the biggest tip of the hat to depression is someone who sleeps a lot. If you notice they love sleeping, they'll tell you, yeah, I love to get up at around 11 and I don't start my day till really around 2 o'clock, and then they're up, and then they'll tell you that they don't sleep well when they're sleeping even. And they'll wake up several times in the middle of the night because they can't shut their brain off. So I think when you see sleeplessness, and then of course it'll show up visibly as a lot of bags underneath the eyes. Now some of you will say, well, hey, I just worked that late and that's why I have the bags under my eyes.
Right.
But notice with these folks that there's this sleeplessness that seems to be tantamount to it. Another thing you'll see is, so on guys, you know, they started off wearing suits and ties and they were well shaven, and after a while you'll notice that they start to not shave as much. They're not paying as much detail to the grooming that they had before.
Okay.
Because there's this worthlessness part of it, you know, one of the three horsemen there that says, well, you don't really have any value. Why should you even worry about trying to shave, or why should you worry about the suit being pressed or not? Just show up. Just be there. I mean, you're just there anyway. So there's that. And then you also would have people that start to overdrink, and this is what you'll see a lot with attorneys. It's white collar crimes. You'll see a lot of it's around alcoholism, and that's usually because of an up and down swing. Right. Sometimes people are bipolar, but sometimes it's just depression. So, and we're not talking about you can't drink, have 1 or 2 drinks, but this person, every time you go out, is not having 1 or 2 drinks. They're drinking 7 to 8 to maybe 9, and then this is the pattern, and they still want to drink more. And you're wondering, why is this person choosing not to go home and sleep and really wants to drink more? So, I mean, these signs, you'll see the appearance, you'll see irritability. They're short with people a lot. Real quick to jump on you, snap at you for something that seems very simple.
And I think, to allude on that, I think another one of the major signs that you can pick up on is isolation.
Absolutely.
You know, we all have friends, and we all go on trips, or you know, we go to events and functions, and if you have that loved one or that friend that's repeatedly telling you that he or she doesn't want to go, I think after a few months, as you were alluding to earlier, I think you could pick up on that something is going on with that person. I think it's time at that point to sit down and have a conversation with them to try to extract some information and figure out like what exactly is going on. So once we talk about the isolation, I mean, it's there's an issue there.
Absolutely,
You know?
absolutely. And what you'll hear in the speech, right? We talked about the outward and then kind of what you might see. When you look at the speech is almost always peppered with something negative.
Okay.
And usually when they're talking, it's everybody else that's attacking them, right? Or when they do finally break down and say, I guess I just can't seem to get my life together. But what you'll notice is the speech is peppered with things like figures, or when you offer some great advice or try to give them a suggestion because they ask you for the advice, they go, but the reason why that won't work is, well, and the reason why I tried that, but, and there's always a but to it, and it's always going back to a negative result.
Well, so then if we're seeing sort of these signs building up and over a period of time, and you're a friend, so then should we ask the question, is that what we should be doing?
I like it. Yeah, we should. We should be able to ask, because we are our brother's keeper, by the way. So we should be able to say, hey, Tom, you don't seem to be as excited about going out. This is your favorite spot. You love to go meet us at, your favorite watering hole, if it were. But you don't seem to want to go anymore. You don't seem, so what's going on? And so again, it's the way you ask questions, because if you go, are you drinking again? Are you? And if you sound condescending, if you sound like you're pointing a finger, immediately that person already is negative, so they're going to get defensive, and that's not what you want. You want this person to come out and speak to you. So you have to ask it more like, hey, what's going on? Like, you tell me. I'm not going to call it out, but I'm going to ask you to see if you will at least reveal and let me know.
Yeah, and what's interesting also is that depression itself, it's impacting the African American community as well, and particularly African American women as well. And one of the issues is that it's stigmatized. It's stigmatized in general, but especially in the Black community. And so sometimes when we're seeing these signs, people may not necessarily reach out for help. And part of it is sort of our cultural, historical perspective. Obviously, we have the slavery from so long ago, where and it's being passed down. Where we're going to remain tough, and we're not going to necessarily cry out loud about a lot of different things, and we're going to internalize things and push through it. But it's becoming more and more important in the African American community that we remove that stigma, because it is causing a lot of us to not be able to get the help that we may need, or to be able to recognize it and be able to help one another.
See, I love that, because you pick right up on the theme, Steve, and that's the same thing. So you do have that in a community, the African American community, and it's strangely it's synonymous with also the military community. How many of them come back with post-traumatic stress syndrome?
Right.
And then when you look at the number of homeless people on the streets, most of them are former military. And so a lot of times when they go into that mode, it's a violent crime that they're going to do to themselves and take a few other people out, because they know how to end a life, right? So now imagine this person coming back, and you've got the stress of everything you saw in combat that you can't quite get rid of, and they're going, oh yeah, and now be a civilian. Right, and that's the same thing like asking someone, when you give a sports star a lot of money, all of a sudden they come from an impoverished background, it's not a surprise that they go right through it.
Right.
And it's not a surprise when someone goes on the TV show Biggest Loser and lose all that weight, that the moment they get back home, they start hitting, the Church's Fried Chicken again and everything else, and they gain it all back. Like there's this pathology that says, I kind of am what I am, and we'll go to it. And so that's why it's dangerous in the African American community, because historically, if you look at the legacy here, there was a lot of cognitive dissonance, and it broke a lot of people to be able to stand strong and go through that. And at the same time, it also broke, this is strange, but also that institution, the peculiar institution, it also broke white people. Because when they were sitting back looking at that, they knew that that wasn't humane, but that's my dad doing that. So how do I tell my dad, who's going to love me and take care of me, that you're wrong? But at the same time, I look at this and I'm seeing this person who did nothing wrong. So you've got all this dissonance that's going on, and people, if they don't find a place, if they don't have hope and a way to kind of see past this, and then kind of see what's the hopeful situation here, then you will carry on a legacy that will always go back to, well, I wasn't supposed to be anything anyway.
That's right. A lot of that brokenness that's there. And in particular, the CDC put out a study showing that while African Americans are least likely to go and get treatment, and so that's really an issue that we have to really focus on, and again try to address for sure. So we pointed out some of the signs that one might see and everything. And then it's a point of trying to address it with the particular person, or if it's you. What if you're the one that's feeling depressed?
Yeah. So whenever we look at the antidote for anything, it's usually the opposite of that. So if negative spiraling happens because you're constantly ruminating on negative things, then the opposite would be true. So if negativity has power and it can force you to go down dark roads, then obviously gratefulness and positive things can actually take you the other direction. I have to believe that if it has enough power going one direction, it has to have enough power to go back the other direction. So what you'll find is that the depressed folks, what I find is when I'm feeling bad and things aren't working necessarily the way I drew them up and I saw them going in my mind, I have to replace every negative thought that pops into my head. Because see, here's the thing. We can't control when the thoughts pop into our heads. They just do. And they're known as memories. But what I can control is what I do with the thought once it gets there. And so once the thought gets there, I'm either going to call it a lie, because it probably is. If it's fear-based, it's probably a lie. Or I can say, oh, that's an experience. That did happen. But because of that experience, it actually made me grow in this area, in this area, in this area. In fact, I actually used it as a strength in some kind of way. So you got to find a way, when it's you finding a little bit of depression, melancholy coming on, you have to counter that with at least 3 affirmative, positive thoughts. It's a 3-to-1 ratio is what we understand in neuroscience. Because 1-to-1 ratio isn't enough. That's how powerful negativity is. And a 2-to-1 ratio, negative to positive, is not enough. It takes 3 positive thoughts to counter 1 negative one. So I do have control over what I think about, and I can take myself there. I can think about better times. I can think about times where I won. I can think about times where I exceeded even my own expectations, right?
Yes.
I can think about times where someone else came along and they helped me when I was too prideful to ask for help myself, and someone else was able to see past my craziness and come and help me, which then shows that not only can I do things, but there are other people who also care, because they've stepped into my life. They've done things. So if negativity is going to take you down a path and then ruminating is going to be bad for you, what if we did it in reverse and did it to the positive? You know, and not a fake positive. Now, I'm not saying let's don't invent stuff that you know you didn't do,
Right.
but let's look at the times where you did win in life. What was going on?
Yeah.
How were you feeling?
And again, those watching, please, if you got any questions or you want to add something in or have something to please don't hesitate to do so. We're watching there, and I want to thank the folks who are chiming in and who are watching right now. Thank you for joining us. Pastor Rick Warren, he had a son who committed suicide a few years ago.
Yeah.
And
Tony Dungy did too.
Yeah. And I mean, and it impacts so many people in so many different ways. And one way onto your talking about the positivity and the ratios was also, he very much emphasized that if you are feeling down and you are depressed, that you have to realize that it is a temporary emotion.
Absolutely.
He gave an example of a survivor of suicide who jumped off of a bridge, and he jumped off to the bridge, and as he was going down, he immediately thought, wait a minute, I could fix these problems, but I can't fix what has just happened, this solution I've chosen. And if I live through this, I'll help other people. And he did live. And he is a survivor of suicide. And he is one who talks a lot about, again, the permanency of suicide in comparison to the temporariness of emotions and feelings. They come and go. You can feel joy one second, pain the other. And a lot of it is just all of us, nobody likes pain.
Right.
And when we feel pain, what we try to do is alleviate it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And there's lots of ways to alleviate pain. And it doesn't have to be a permanent situation, you know.
That's exactly right. So if we were to summarize it, if folks are just now tuning in maybe and they're saying, okay, so what are the 4 ways that we can counter this? So the first thing that was mentioned here was understanding that it is just a feeling. It's temporary. It's a temporal type situation at first. So we want to initially pay attention to that and not give it more weight than it needs, that it deserves at
That's
first.
right.
When you recognize that this is just something that's happening. And the second thing is that if you don't want to incubate, you don't want to create an incubator for depression. And the easiest way to do that is to isolate. So you don't want to isolate. You want to keep out there in front of people. Even when you say, well, I don't really feel like being in front of people. I don't want anybody in my face right now, or whatever the thought might be. You still have to say, no, let me get out, because I don't know. Me just being out might be something that helps somebody else.
That's right.
And
That's
now
right.
you get to give, because there was someone who did say it's better to give than receive. So sometimes maybe to get back on track, maybe you need to give something to somebody else. Even though you may feel like you don't have anything to give, everybody always has something to give. Anybody can say a kind word, and anybody can throw a smile at you.
That's right.
Deion Sanders can throw a smile, can't he? Right? He can play cornerback too, but there's something about seeing people who can smile, and that doesn't take a lot of energy. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is, again, practice the positivity. Practice it. Understand that if negativity can have a foothold, well, then so can positivity. And again, we're not talking about fake positivity, manufactured positivity. We're talking about real commando type stuff you've done in your life that's pretty impressive.
And we've
Go
all
back and
done
look at it.
something, and so you got to remember
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
We all have value. Absolutely.
And the fourth thing is get help, and you're going to tell them exactly the number, because I don't have it right off the top
Yeah,
of my dome,
yeah.
but I know you have it.
Yeah,
TLAP.
so two ways to get help. One of them is 1-800-273-TALK. 1-800-273-TALK. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If you are having thoughts about hurting yourself, the first thing you need to do is call that number. That's what you need to do. The other number, specifically for lawyers, is this is the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program, and that number is 1-800-343-8527.
TLAP.
1-800-343-8527. That is a confidential line. I used to be on the State Bar Board of Directors, and I know a lot about that program. It's extremely confidential. It has saved many lives, and I'd really encourage you, if you're a lawyer and you're feeling a certain kind of way where you're feeling depressed, you might hurt yourself, or you have substance abuse or something like that, please call that line. It's confidential, and we really want you to do that.
That's exactly right. And I would just say, just for everyone listening and paying attention, yes, it's true. It's not if life will get tough, it's when life will get tough. And when it does, there are alternatives. And when you're able to look at yourself and understand and have a good understanding of self, you'll be able to see the things that you've done, but also the things that other people have done to ensure that you got this far. So always, always, always remember, be thinking from a position of strength. I know weakness is easy, but think about the strengths at that moment. You know, it took a lot to get through college. It took a lot to get through law school, and you made it.
Yeah.
You got there. So what the thing is, see, we tend to worry about things that haven't gone right, at the exclusion of looking at all the things that we actually did do right along the way. So why should the negative get that much attention? I'm going to make the appeal to you. Don't let the negative get that much attention. It doesn't deserve it. Instead, look back, shoulders get back, and you say, you know what? I did do this. I also did this. I have great people around me, and there's a bunch of people who are rooting for me and who want to see me win. So because of that, if I'm going to let myself down, I'm definitely not going to let them down. But either way, nobody should be let down here, because it's not that I don't have skills and abilities. It's not that anyone does not have skills or abilities. You do. Just at the moment, you're probably not utilizing them, or maybe you're overutilizing them and you've made it just a single solitary identity, but you're much more multifaceted than that.